Good morning, world.
Good morning, Michigan. A very pleasant Tuesday to you. It is Michael Patrick Shields all across the state of Michigan, and to all the boats in the lakes, good morning to you, too. Questions being asked around the state capital of Lansing. The insiders seem to be assuming that Governor-elect Rick Snyder is going to be offering more moderate budget solutions than the right-leaning legislature really wants. Is that going to be the case? And next year, with a GOP-controlled legislature and governor, is it a sure bet that teacher health care benefits will be put on par with private sector benefits? And is there any reason to expect legislative Democrats to support all cut budgets? Those are some of the questions being asked, and some of the questions eventually we will have answers to. We got some answers last night, Gary Austin.
Yes.
Good morning to you.
Hi, MPS.
Former President George W. Bush revealed he decided to bail out General Motors and Chrysler earlier than he publicly acknowledged. He's got the new book, his new memoir, if you will, and he said he made the decision to rescue Ford and Chrysler in November, not Ford, General Motors and Chrysler of 2008 to safeguard American workers and stop a widespread collapse. The bailout was made public in late December, when the government put $17.4 billion into those companies. And I don't know if last night you watched George W. with Matt Lauer on NBC in prime time there, but here's a little bit of audio in case you missed it. One of the things that President George W. Bush regrets.
Well, first of all, the truth is I was disappointed, deeply disappointed, and still am. And secondly, we would have moved heaven and earth together.
He's talking, of course, about Osama bin Laden in his book Decision Points. He also recounts the events of 9/11. He thought the first plane crash in the World Trade Center could have been an accident, but when the second hit and the third plane, he knew it was an act of war. Bush voluntarily talked about waterboarding 3 al-Qaeda suspects at Guantanamo, and he said his legal team said those tactics were legal. He said that when it comes to Hurricane Katrina, he made a mistake by simply flying over New Orleans in Air Force One. He says he should have landed in Baton Rouge and met with the Louisiana governor and promised whatever federal help was necessary. When it comes to the economic crisis and the recession at the end of his second term, he said he endorsed the TARP program, the Troubled Asset Relief Program, to pull the economy back from the brink. And he said that the crisis really was 10 years in the making, and he said that Wall Street got drunk and we got the hangover. Here's what he said directly about ordering the waterboarding against a top al-Qaeda suspect.
One of the high-valued al-Qaeda operatives was Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the chief operating officer of al-Qaeda, ordered the attack on 9/11. And they say, he's got information. I said, find out what he knows. And so I said to our team, are the techniques legal? And a legal team says, yes, they are. And I said, use them.
Yeah, why not? And then again, the economic crisis was years in the making, according to Bush.
Yeah, I said Wall Street got drunk and we got the hangover.
There you have it. That was yesterday with Matt Lauer, and the book is called Decision Points. It goes on sale this very day. And later in the program, we'll be talking with someone who has read the book cover to cover, Daniel Stone from Newsweek magazine. He's at the Washington Bureau. Jim Nantz will join us later. Gary Austin, the CBS sportscaster, who's a big star, does golf, does college basketball, calls the NFL, and he'll be coming to Detroit for the Thanksgiving Day game. Now, if you didn't stay up and watch George Bush at 8 o'clock, I'm guessing you didn't stay up till 11 to watch Conan O'Brien return to television.
True, MPS. But one quick thing on the George Bush book. It just occurred to me, I'm sure some are asking themselves the same question as I am right now. Why did he do it? What's the point in writing this book and discussing things that, in the big picture, really don't have to be discussed? George Bush
what a memoir is for.
Yeah, but he's fascinating. Yeah, it is. But when you write a book and you admit some of the mistakes you made, some may say, some may not, for themselves. And the last thing they'd want to do is to put in print for the world to see some mistakes that they made and sort of fessing up to it all. Certainly, George Bush doesn't need the money, obviously. So it's not about how much money he's going to make from writing this book. There had to be a reason he did it. I think it's kind of interesting, maybe in retrospect. It's something maybe politicians do who've been in office for a long time. You've pursued something for a long time, and you talk about things that worked out well, and you also feel comfortable and at ease and at one with yourself to talk about things that maybe didn't work out so well either. So perhaps that's why George W. Bush decided to do that. Who knows? But in any event, I mean, it makes for interesting reading, no doubt, especially, I think, the reason why he made certain decisions, the things he did, why he did them, and this all-out hunt. And as long as he's been president, and I'm sure Barack Obama's thinking the same thing, it would be just wonderful to find Osama bin Laden.
It's not really comparable by scale, but I've got this new book coming out in about a week now, Gary Austin,
Yes.
called Invite Yourself to the Party.
Yeah.
And in this book, I do exactly what you say. I figure, get out in front of everything, tell the real story, tell the behind-the-scenes story, tell the mistakes, and it's more interesting reading for people, I think, to read about mistakes than about when everything goes great. Right?
You're right, MPS. It makes for good reading. Certainly, unveiling things, finding things out about people that you really didn't know about. You're always kind of curious about. Now, I mean, some may say when they read your book, say, gee, why in the world is MPS discussing things about himself, private things, that a lot of people would feel uncomfortable about discussing? So I pose the question to you, MPS. Why?
Better that I tell it than somebody else.
That's a good reason. I'll buy that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the butt of the joke in most of the stories in the book. I mean, because if I who would want to read a book about somebody saying, well, I did this and I did that, and it was all great? I'd rather tell we can learn from the mistakes.
True. Good point.
And, so that's kind of what it's about. It's about invite yourself to the party is about, how if you throw yourself in the mix, take a couple chances, turn up in life, show up, get outside your comfort zone, interesting things can happen to you. You got to sort of invite yourself to the party, and it won't always be comfortable, and it won't always go well. There'll be plenty of, uncomfortable moments, but the good ones will outweigh the bad ones. And that's what I told in the book. I told a lot of stories about things that went haywire. If you watch this program on TV or listen to it on the radio, you say, wow, that's smooth, that really went well. But you don't want to hear about that. You want to hear about what went wrong behind the scenes, right? And how we overcame this and that. And, what happened when we got embarrassed with one of our celebrity guests. So that's what the book is full of, little tales like that.
That's neat, MPS. And I think, too, by putting it in those terms, those who read it, not only will it be interesting, but they may learn from some of the things you did. And they say, well, you know what, that's a course that I'm heading down, and MPS tried that, didn't work for him. I better reassess, what I'm doing if their experiences are starting to mirror yours. And I think that will make for interesting reading. Agreed.
Well, it's lighthearted, and it's fun, and it's funny, and you can go to inviteyourselftotheparty.com if you want to have a sneak peek at it or order it ahead of time. But there'll be plenty of signing events and that sort of thing coming starting just before Thanksgiving and then all the way through the holiday season. I heard Chris Matthews on Hardball. You ever watch that show?
Yes.
On MSNBC?
Right.
He was interviewing Haley Barbour, who, by the way, is one of the stories. I spent a weekend with Governor Haley Barbour from Mississippi, and it's sort of an inside look at a guy who may be running for president. And said some things that were kind of surprising to me in that weekend. But Chris Matthews was interviewing Haley Barbour last week, and Haley Barbour said to him, and Chris Matthews said, how are you going to run for president against Barack Obama? You're dripping Dixie. You're a fully rounded, referring to his stomach, man. You're a good old boy from the South. You were the Republican Party chair, a total partisan. How are you going to run for president? And Haley Barbour said, well, Chris, you forgot to tell him I'm a lobbyist, too, on top of all that.
Right.
And Chris Matthews started laughing because he's like, well, the old adage in politics is hang a lantern on your problems. And you sure did it there. And I've been fascinated by that little phrase lately because it sort of means when you've got a weakness, when you've got a problem that people are going to point at, you might as well be the one to hang the lantern on it.
Very good point. Why not? Why open the door to a full-fledged investigation when you can put all of that aside and unveil everything right out of the gate? Good point.
Might be an interesting thing to do if you're in a job interview, or maybe you're dating a woman or something like that, or you might want to say, hey, I might not be the best poker player you're ever going to meet, but I'm pretty good at X.
MPS, good point, because if these folks, whether it's the job interview, the woman you're dating, whatever the case may be, if they're going to find out about it anyway, better to find out from you than from the guy next door.
So that's what I think President Bush is thinking in his memoir. He might as well tell the truth. He might as well be honest, because if he's not, the people are going to read the book and say, oh, this is a puff piece. There's nothing in here of any interest. We want to read what he's really thinking, and that's what I think he did with the book, Decision Points. But we'll talk to the fella from Newsweek magazine, Daniel Stone, a little bit later, because he's read the entire book. And also, we're going to be joined by Jim Nantz from CBS Sports, who he was very generous. He wrote an endorsement for my new book, and it's right smack on the cover.
Neat.
From Jim Nantz for Invite Yourself to the Party. So he's coming to Michigan for the the Lions game on Thanksgiving Day, and we're going to talk to him about his visit to Detroit and other things too. David Brandon will be here too, the University of Michigan athletic director, and we're going to talk to the mayor of Mackinac Island coming up shortly, Margaret Dowd, on the Battle of the Straits, the ferry battle that's going on up there between Sheplers and Arnold and Star. When will Mackinac Island make its decision? And will there be service next year? What if they're shooting pecan balls and fudge and road apples at each other as you make your way across the straits, like a naval battle with horse manure? That would really be something, wouldn't it? Probably won't happen, but we'll ask the mayor about that as soon as we get back. He's Gary Austin. I'm Michael Patrick Shields. Back in a flash.
Don't say it. Don't say it. Say it. Don't say goodnight tonight. Don't say it.
23 minutes after the hour, Michael Patrick Shields, heard all across the state of Michigan and the state capital of Lansing, Grand Rapids, Muskegon, Mount Pleasant, Saginaw, Petoskey, Traverse City, and even on Mackinac Island, where we're joined nice and early this morning by the mayor of the city of Mackinac Island, Margaret Dowd. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
Very nice to meet you. Is that a grueling job? Because it sounds like a lot of fun to be the mayor of such a wonderful spot.
Well, normally it is a lot of fun, but it's a lot of work, too.
Yeah, and lately I'm not sure fun would probably be the label when we talk about what sort of seems like the battle of the Straits of Mackinac between the ferry companies there. And we've been trying to follow the story, trying to understand exactly what is going on with the Arnold Line and the Star Line and the Sheplers Ferry Line. Can you bring us up to date and sort of summarize the story and what will happen with the ferry service next spring?
Right. We have been looking at the ferry franchises, which expire on March 31, 2011, for all ferry boats. And the city of Mackinac Island has not made any decisions. We have not said that we are going to grant only one, which it has been rumored all over that we have.
Mm-hmm.
We are just looking at financials. We are considering all three proposals that each ferry line gave to the city of Mackinac Island, and we are going to take our time to deliberate to see what is best for the island and also the Straits area, which we realize Mackinac Island does impact.
Is there some reason to not let the business go on as usual, all three ferry services working?
We never said that we're not going to. Mm-hmm. We never did say that we're not going to. It has been rumored, and of course, everybody has been saying that we're putting Shepler Inc. out of business. Never has one person at the city council said that, nor myself, and never has a vote been taken that is going to happen.
Is it possible that not all three ferry lines will be running next spring?
You know, anything is possible, but I don't see that right now on that radar screen.
You think that it will remain, will have the choice of Star, Arnold, or Sheplers come next spring?
I think that we're going to deliberate, and I think the big point here is cooperation.
Mm-hmm.
If all ferry lines cooperate with us, right now we have not seen Shepler's financials. I begged with them at every city council meeting to cooperate with us, get us the information so that we can make an educated decision and make it for the benefit of all the people. And we have to look, too, at the 500 year-round residents that live here, especially the extended service in the spring and in the fall. That's very, very crucial because we're an island.
How soon will you decide to grant the licenses again to all three ferry companies, or whether or not Star and Arnold merge? How soon will you make your decision so those companies can plan for the future?
We want to do it as timely as possible, and I'm hoping no later than the first of the year, and hopefully sooner than that.
And how long, what is the decision-making process? Why does it take so long? After all, the ferry lines have been running for, some of them, as long as 60 years now, right?
That's correct, yes. I think it's getting the financial, looking at the data, making sure that they're all cooperating with us. And I think another big point is, too, that they have to recognize that the city does have regulatory power. And we want them to realize that. We have a very old charter that dates back to 1899 that gives the city this power to regulate the ferry lines that come into Mackinac Island.
Doesn't it make sense that if you have more ferries running, people have more choice and they can get to the island easier? For instance, if you're you're going to go on the half hour, you're going to go on the hour, there are going to be more choices, more boats?
Well, I think that is true. However, I think the city has to look at the schedules also on the fares, because right now, for many years, the fares have all been the same, and the people haven't really had a choice because the fares have all been the same. And I think that we have to work with the ferry boats to make sure that there is some competition in the fares, and also that there are schedules that benefit the whole area, especially later schedules into the evening when people can come over to the island, have dinner, and then get a later ferry off. We have to have some control of that to benefit the island.
Yeah, I would think so. And the fact, too, it seems to make sense that if you have competition, the pricing on the ferries would stay lower, right?
That is correct.
So
that is absolutely correct. And we want to enforce that so that the people do have a choice when they come to the island.
How often do the ferry companies have to give their bids as they are right now? Is that yearly? Is that every 10 years? How often does that happen?
Well, it depends on how long we grant a franchise for. When we first did the franchise in the early 80s, we granted a 20-year franchise. But since that time, it has been more 2 to 3 years at a time. So I don't know how long this one will be granted for. The council hasn't made any decision yet.
Isn't it true that Mr. Wynn said that if he's going to operate with a merged version of the Star Line and the Arnold Line, that the Shepler Line has to go away? In order for him to do business, he's got to have a monopoly on the Straits?
That was in his proposal that we took a look at.
And how did you react to that?
That is on the table with everything else, but nobody has made any decision on that.
If Star Line is the weakest of the three and they were about to go out of business, why not just let them go out of business? After all, I mean, that's survival of the fittest, isn't it? It's a free market economy, right?
That is correct. And we know nothing other than what was in the proposal about what's happening between Arnold Line and Star Line. That's between those two companies.
So just to summarize, what you told me earlier is that you believe it's very likely that come spring, all three ferry services will still be in operation.
There has certainly been no decision to put Shepler Inc. out of business. No decision and no vote by any member of the City Council. And I reminded Chris Shepler of that at our meeting a week ago Wednesday night. I looked him right in the eye and I said, Chris, have I said to you that you're going to be put out of business? And he said, no. I said, has any member of my city council said that? He said, no. I said, well, then I would wish that the rumors that are floating around the Straits area would cease and desist.
Well, I guess you can see why they would be concerned if the other party bidding against them is asking specifically for them to be put out of business so that he can run the monopoly, right? He's fighting for his life, it sounds like.
But that doesn't necessarily mean the city of Mackinac Island is going to accept that proposal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that is strictly a proposal at this time.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess we're going to wait till you said now the decision will be made somewhere around the first of the year or maybe before if possible so that obviously they can all start their advertising campaigns and start planning with their employees and that sort of thing for the new season. If you decide to go forward with all three ferries, how long will their license be good? Are you going to do another 10-year or 20-year, longer,
Don't
less?
know at this time. Don't know. That's all on the table. Don't know it.
And will you yourself, the mayor of Mackinac Island, make the ultimate decision?
No. That's council decision, a vote of the council.
And you
I only vote if there's a tie. I'm not a voting member of the council.
And have you sort of polled the council to see where they stand?
No, because we don't have all the information yet.
Okay, so you're still putting together bid proposals and that sort of thing, financials that you mentioned?
And financials and so forth.
Okay, well, there were probably people around the state who are wondering if it isn't broken, why fix it? Is the ferry system solid and working well and to the pleasure and benefit of Mackinac Island?
Well, I think that the reason that the city of Mackinac Island looked at it is, one, we were concerned about rates, two, the duplication of schedules, and three, in these economic times, you know, there could be fuel reduction if they would certainly work together among themselves and cut down some of the extra trips that don't need to be. And I think that's when the city got in and said, you know, everything else is downsizing some. That doesn't mean putting anybody out of business, but you've got to work together to lower the fares so that more people will come to the island.
So you're suggesting if there were less boats running, in other words, less routes, they wouldn't have to spend so much on fuel so they could lower the prices?
Yes.
But isn't that a decision they have to make?
Yes, they have to make that, but I think that we have to force them to look at that. You see?
Well, I appreciate you being up early with us this morning, and if you don't mind, we'll keep in touch along the way. It's of great interest to us because we have listeners all across the state who come to Mackinac Island. We treasure it, and you know, it's the one place in the state where we can all relax, and you are the mayor there, and we want everybody to be happy and healthy. Lots of options to get to the island, so thank you very much for keeping us up to date on the process.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you having me, and I do promise that I will keep in touch.
Thank you very much. The mayor of the city of Mackinac Island, Margaret Dowd, this morning on the Battle of the Straits between the ferry lines, and maybe all three of them will be in business come spring. We'll be the first to know here. It's 35 after the hour. You may have heard us talking earlier about President George W. Bush's book, and he talked with Matt Lauer yesterday on Prime Time on NBC. And there are more details coming out. Now we're going to talk with Daniel Stone from Newsweek magazine a little bit later. He's read the book cover to cover. But John Engler, the Michigan governor, was one of 9 finalists for the vice presidential pick in the year 2000. And the president confirms that in his memoir, which is being released today. It's called Decision Points. Engler was the 3-term Michigan governor, and he says that he was one of the finalists. He ultimately chose Dick Cheney over the objections of his political advisor, Karl Rove. But he says he could have gotten along very well with Engler. They would have worked well together. But he picked Dick Cheney. And also, he says concerning Sarah Palin, quote, "I'm not a political pundit. I'm really not. A lot's going to happen between now and the nominating process. I have no clue." That's what the former president is saying. So John Engler was in the mix after all and might have been picked as vice president, but alas, it was not to be. Conan O'Brien got it cranked up yesterday, his TV show. You remember he hosted The Tonight Show for about a year, I guess, until Jay Leno decided he wanted it back. And so Conan now appears on TBS. And O'Brien has joked that he dreamed of being a talk show host on basic cable ever since he was 46. That's about the time he got kicked off the Tonight Show. And he took a little jab at NBC, too. Here it is.
I'm going to be honest, though. It's not easy doing a late-night show on a channel without a lot of money that viewers have trouble finding. So that's why I left NBC.
I get you. Yeah, his show is going to be 4 nights a week, I guess, just like Johnny Carson was, from 11 until 12 on TBS. And he had a montage scene yesterday at the beginning of his new show, Conan. And Larry King stops Conan O'Brien from jumping off a bridge in this audio here.
Don't do it, Conan.
Larry King?
I'm your guardian angel.
But you're not dead.
Never mind that. I have 2 words for you. Basic cable.
Basic cable.
Yeah, so that's where he is now anyway, if you want to find him. 5 accused Somali pirates are facing trial in Virginia. Jury selection beginning today in Norfolk there. This is the first time since 1861 that there has been a piracy case tried in the United States. And so those dead men tell no tales, but these guys are live pirates, and they're going to be on trial in Virginia, just like the good old days of Captain Jack Sparrow and all the rest. It sounds like a confession in that song, doesn't it? We pillage and plunder and kidnap. I don't think the information will be that forthcoming in the trial of the pirates. General Motors is killing its storied Goodwrench brand in the United States as it strives to strengthen its marketing focus around the core brands. And Goodwrench was a familiar name used by GM dealers to advertise maintenance and repairs for 3 decades. That will meet its end, though, February 1st, 2011. Goodbye, Mr. Goodwrench. Teens who text 120 times a day or more, and there seem to be a lot of them, don't there, are more likely to have had sex or used alcohol and drugs than kids who don't send as many text messages. That's the thing. There's a correlation between frequent texting and sex and alcohol and drugs. The study's authors aren't suggesting necessarily that hypertexting leads to sex, but it's starting to see a link between excessive messaging and risky behavior. Put that phone down. It's dinner time. Lansing Mayor Virg Bonero chastised the city council members for risking a legal battle with Pat Gillespie yesterday over $4 million in incentives for the city marketplace development. And the city council could not get the 6 votes needed to put forth a motion to enter the legal fray. And so it looks like all systems go now for the city market there yesterday. We're going to talk with Lansing City Council member Kathy Dunbar coming up shortly, and we're just going to chat about what went on there at the meeting yesterday. And you remember that the City Council tried to stop Pat Gillespie from going forward with the project with the brownfield grants. A judge said you can't really do that. He's done everything he's needed to get the thing in order, and the City Council was going to vote yesterday whether to appeal that legal decision, which could have left them open to $6 million in damages to Pat Gillespie, which the taxpayers would have had to pay for. Congratulations to Kelly Chesney. She had been working for the Secretary of State, Terry Lynn Land, for a long time. You've heard her on this program. She is now the Vice President of Marketing and Communications for Business Leaders for Michigan. So we'll try to reach out to, as the administrations change, people are changing positions, going here and there, and she's a good one, so we appreciate that. The Michigan Truth Squad said 73% of political ads had foul calls. So there you go. When the political season here, 73% of the ads were less than truthful, according to the Michigan Truth Squad. We lost Malcolm Pete Wood. He died Sunday after suffering a stroke. He was 78 years old. He's the man who took over the Mack Woods dune rides from his father, Malcolm Mack Wood, in 1958 there in Silver Lake in the Muskegon area. If you've ever been on one of those rides along the lake there, it's an absolute blast. It's like a roller coaster on sand right on down to the lake shore. And so we give our condolences to the family of Malcolm Pete Wood, who passed away this weekend. The state of Michigan reached a settlement with Enbridge Energy Partners considering the oil spill in Calhoun County. Enbridge is going to have to restore the impacted natural resources, among other things. More news coming and interviews too. Jim Nance later in the program. It's Michael Patrick Shields. Beautiful day, Tuesday, and Governor-elect Rick Snyder, you know by now, is bringing in the outgoing Democratic House Speaker Andy Dillon into his cabinet. Andy Dillon is going to be the state treasurer, and he said it's time to shed the labels. Two people who stopped their car to help out people they thought were broken down instead were victimized by being carjacked at gunpoint yesterday in Gunplain Township. It happened Saturday night, actually, on 106th Avenue between US 131 and 10th Street. The victim said two people flagged them down, and they stopped to help. And one person pulled a gun and stole their car. That's what you get for trying to be Mr. Nice Guy, huh? Remember that story about the dog that wouldn't die? A guy in Redford Township took his dog to be euthanized. They euthanized the dog, and he brought it home to bury it, and it woke up the next day and started walking around on all fours, staring at him. The resurrected dog apparently is going to be going to a new home. There were a lot of people who reacted to the story, including a paralegal from Dripping Springs, Texas. And she wanted to fly up to work and bring the dog back down. And the dog, is going to have a new home and spared from being euthanized. I mean, they tried to it's the strangest thing I've ever heard. Strange thing we heard around these parts was all the debate over the city market arrangement at the riverfront down there across from the new Accident Fund headquarters right next to the Lansing Center. Kathy Dunbar, nice enough to join us, a member of the Lansing City Council. Good morning to you.
Morning.
We've been following the story fairly closely, and there are people around the state who have been hearing about it as well. And yesterday there was a meeting, I guess, with the city council, and the decision was to be made as to whether the city council would challenge the ruling of Judge Aquilina that Pat Gillespie should get the brownfield funds and go ahead with the development of the city market project. It's going to be mixed use, apartments and restaurants and that sort of thing. So everyone was kind of holding their breath to see what would happen yesterday at the city council meeting. And what happened?
We actually, I apologize, Michael. I've got laryngitis, so
I'm sorry.
I'm hoping this comes across okay. But
sure.
We actually did not add the item to the agenda, so it is it's done. It's dead. There's no appeal. The project will move forward.
All systems go then. No more appeal. No more arguing. It will move forward.
Well, I would never, ever, ever assume that there won't be any more arguing. But
okay.
The project is a go.
Okay. And were there? I guess you needed 6 votes, as I understand it, yesterday, in order to challenge the legal decision. Did you get? I mean, you didn't even put it to a vote then. Is that right? Or was there a sort of a straw poll?
There was an attempt made to add it to the agenda. It requires 6 to add it to the agenda, and there were 5 votes.
So, wow. So there were 5 people who wanted to go ahead and have legal action, eh?
No. I wouldn't say that. I would say that there were 5 votes to actually add it to the agenda to have the discussion. I think the ultimate vote would have ended 4-4.
Which would not have been enough to go forward with legal action.
Right.
Okay, so we can put this to bed for now then, huh?
Yes, for now. I'm hopeful that both sides that are involved are going to come back to the table and have a discussion about the issues. I think that there were, I think it's a valid cause that folks want to see some benefit to the community whenever we give incentives out for projects.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it was the wrong timing to throw that onto a project that was this far into the development stage.
So in the future, then, will all the T's be crossed and the I's be dotted at the very beginning of the process?
That would be my goal.
Yeah.
I would hope so.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we don't.
And I think that it's a good project. I think for this. I mean, it's sad that it had to come to the point where it got to a judge. I think it's a very telling thing for me last night was that we had another company come forward for a brownfield.
Mm-hmm.
And it passed unanimously. And I asked on the floor, did anyone have a discussion about PLAs or anything like that while this was in committee? And the answer was no.
Well, what does that tell us? Does that tell us that it's maybe personal between certain members of the council and Pat Gillespie and the union?
I'm thinking maybe yes. And I'll let people draw their own conclusions. But I said to one of the development economic development folks that I thought that the two projects that we were considering, although some would say that they were apples and oranges, I said that they were Galas and Macintosh. They were two different versions of apples, and very similar to the point that, I was hoping that my colleagues would sort of recognize the hypocrisy of dealing with one differently and not the other.
Well, the only good thing that it seems like you can say about this situation, because a lot of people found it to be unpleasant and there were hurt feelings and all that sort of thing, is that it happened in a transparent fashion. So anybody in the city of Lansing who has a chance to vote next time around can see exactly what happened right out in the public, right out in the media, as opposed to behind closed doors. So although it was unpleasant, at least it was transparent. Is that fair to say?
I think it was educational.
Yeah. That's a good word. Thank you very much, and we don't want to waste your voice there. I suggest a little whiskey and honey for you.
Thank you. I like the whiskey part.
Me too. Nice to talk to you. Kathy Dunbar, Lansing City Council. Jim Nantz later in the program. It's Michael Patrick Shields. Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. Michigan and all the boats and the lakes. It's Michael Patrick Shields with you. We're going to talk with CBS sportscaster Jim Nantz 1 hour from right now. And Gary Austin, you mentioned yesterday that the gas prices have gone up.
Oh, man.
And up they have, huh?
They sure have. They just keep on edging up, MPS, just in time for the holidays. Really a bad combo. Gasoline prices heading in the wrong direction, along with the cost of flying as well. What we pay at the pump has been a concern for weeks. At some stations across Michigan, we're at $3 a gallon now. Plus, and the experts say the latest price surge is not done yet. As for airfares, they are getting more costly too. No big deal for those who've already bought that holiday travel ticket, but for those who have not, at one point, MPS, I heard one analyst say for every day we wait, the price of an average ticket goes up about $10.
Oh, really?
And that seems to be the case as airlines hope to recoup a lot of what they did not make up in the slower-going summer and fall travel season. With the economy being in the kind of shape it's been in, many opted to stay home over the summer holiday time and not fly anywhere but drive instead.
Over the river and through the woods to grandmother's house.
That was the plan. All right, that bad oil spill in Calhoun County earlier this year, and now the state and Enbridge have come to terms on a settlement. Now, while much of the cleanup is done, this new deal says Enbridge has got to come up with a long-range plan to make sure the cleanup is as thorough as can be. In addition, Enbridge is required to make sure the areas affected by the spill are as they were before the July tragedy happened. Got a new study here, MPS. It finds employers would do well to fund flu shot programs. In other words, pay for flu shots for their employees. In other words, have someone, I presume, some specialists come into the office. That happens a lot today, and give flu shots for free. And this study finds best to start in November. Researchers say do that and prevent flu-related absenteeism and the like, and the loss of productivity. And the company would save a lot of money. Boy, here's a bizarre story. This is one of these stories, MPS, we get every now and again. And I say to myself, should I do this or not? This is so odd and so bizarre, yet a little unnerving. But the sheer nature of it and the sheer curiosity of it, I think you'll find, well, curious. If you think you may have a sexually transmitted disease, there may soon be a cell phone app to help you find out. And MPS, hazard a guess how you can use a cell phone to figure out if you have an STD. Oh, man.
You're asking the wrong person.
Yeah, okay. A good answer. Okay, according to The Guardian, British health officials are working on a new app that will allow users to urinate in their cell phones.
All right.
To find out within minutes if they have an STD. Okay, enough of that. Okay, and finally, something else for moms and dads to worry about. And reason number 5,328, while I have dogs and no kids. A new study indicates that teens who text incessantly are 3.5 times more likely to have sex. And researchers found the connection between hypertexting. What is that? Like texting really fast, I assume, right?
No, I think it's sending a lot of them.
Oh, okay.
More than 110 a day or something like that.
Okay, hypertexting. Oh, here it is. Okay, texting. Very good, MPS. Texting more than 120 times each school day, and dangerous behavior was not confined to just sexual activity. Teens who are hypertexters are also found to be more likely to smoke, try alcohol, be binge drinkers, use illicit drugs, get into physical fights, and have multiple sexual partners.
Put that phone down at dinner time.
That's right. Do something else with it. Go out and play sports or do something.
I wonder why that is. If their inhibitions are lowered because they're texting and they can make arrangements a lot better.
You know, that could be it. I think too. Yeah, I guess the ability to connect quickly, and maybe MPS, these kids, they do it so fast. They don't have time to think what they're doing. You know, you do something real fast, you don't really reason things out. I mean, we do that every now and again around the office. You work real fast. You think, my gosh, if I'd only slowed down, I wouldn't have made that mistake. If I wasn't working so fast, maybe it's the same sort of thing here. Who knows?
Chrysler continues to battle back from the brink. Third quarter operating profit of $239 million. And, you know, you get into these kind of figures, it's all a little strange. But the good news is it looks like Chrysler could be at least making steps toward coming back. We don't want to, rush the decision there yet. But that's better than saying they lost a bunch of money, I would think.
Better than the alternative. Hey, how about Governor-elect Rick Snyder? He is really working fast and getting his cabinet put together here. We have two new additions. We have Andy Dillon, Democrat Speaker of the House. He's going to be our new state treasurer under the new
He says,
Snyder
time
cabinet.
to shed the labels. Never mind, Republican, Democrat, forget it. I'm going to go in there and be the state treasurer in nonpartisan sort of fashion, I guess.
Isn't that something? Andy Dillon, now he came very close. Of course, Verge Bernero won the nomination, but I mean, if Verge didn't, I mean, Andy Dillon would have been facing Rick Snyder. So in any event, I just wonder. Let's conjecture, MPS. Could we do that for a moment?
If you will.
Okay. Let's say Andy Dillon ends up winning the Democrat nomination for governor, and he runs against Rick Snyder. And presumably, I mean, Snyder was rolling right along. All polling data showed this was a Republican year. Rick Snyder wins. Andy Dillon probably would not be offered this attorney, this treasurer's job, right?
Yeah, I guess not. Probably not.
So on the flip side, I mean, if there's a good thing to losing, if Andy Dillon really likes his state treasurer job, and presumably, I mean, he said yes to Rick Snyder's offer here. So if a dark cloud has a silver lining, perhaps Andy Dillon losing opened up new doors.
Did you see that George Bush in his new memoir says that John Engler was among the finalists to run as vice president with him back in the year 2000?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he says that in the book. He says, I could have worked well with Engler, and I could have worked well with Oklahoma Governor Frank Keating. He ended up choosing Dick Cheney. And his advisors didn't like Karl Rove, and those guys didn't want Dick Cheney to be his running mate, but he decided to do it. This is all in Decision Points. The book that came out today, this is the memoir of George W. Bush, so there's a little Michigan connection in there. And also, the president also admits that he decided to save Chrysler and General Motors long before they made that idea public. So there are some interesting details in there, and John Engler could have been possibly vice president.
Isn't that something? I mean, imagine. I mean, that would have changed the Michigan landscape for sure if John Engler had have ended up with that top job.
Mr. Goodwrench's history. General Motors is killing the brand in the United States.
Yeah,
and then another one bites the dust there.
That campaign is. Oh, by the way, just one more addition to the Rick Snyder cabinet story here. We do have Dick Posthumus, a well-known name in politics, kind of in and out. He's been out for a while. He's back in now big time because he's going to be a senior advisor for Rick Snyder here when he takes over in January.
Gary Austin, let me just give you some numbers here. The Dow dipped 37 yesterday. The S&P was down 3, and the NASDAQ gained a point. And we never let the birthday of a beautiful woman pass without taking note. Vanessa Manillo, who has been on the program with me, she's a TV host, is 30. Conan O'Brien got started yesterday with his new talk show. That's from 11 till 12 on TBS. And it seems, according to the Detroit News, that the lake levels are down in the Great Lakes. And so we are bringing in a special guest, Keith Kompaltowitz. He's a meteorologist with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in Detroit. Good morning to you.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. I'm very interested in the levels of the lake and what it means to all of us. We're heard on stations on every single one of the Great Lakes, pretty much. Can you bring us up to date on what's happening and what should or can be done?
Well, currently we're below last year on all of the Great Lakes, and all the Great Lakes are in their period of seasonal decline. Usually the lakes rise in the springtime to their peaks in the summer, and then once evaporation and cooler temperatures take hold, the lakes begin their seasonal decline, and that's where they're all currently at. For example, Lake Michigan and Huron, they're about 9 inches below where they were last year, and that's about 15 inches below where they normally are this time of year.
Wow, is that something to be concerned about, or is it all part of the cycle?
Well, we definitely have seen higher than average water levels and lower than average water levels, going back to our period of record.
Mm-hmm.
We're still on Lake Michigan and Huron, we're still, a foot or more above the all-time record lows. So it's just we had a very dry spring. And then, as we went into the summertime, we saw some very warm water temperatures. And then this time of year, when the air temperature gets colder, interacting with that warmer water, we see large evaporation. So that's kind of why we're on, going on the lower end of where we've been the past couple of years.
Can you forecast at all what it will be like next spring? Can we make up some of this ground?
Our latest forecasts go into April, and the way things stand right now, it looks like we're going to, see continued levels that are below last year by April on Lake Michigan and Huron, maybe 6 inches below last year, and that would be about 16 inches below the long-term average. Now, if we were to see a very, very snowy winter and a good ice cover form early on the lakes, those forecasts would have to be adjusted to account for that.
I remember seeing pictures last year of harbors in the Upper Peninsula where boats couldn't even get in anymore because the level was so low. Is that still likely or possible for shipping and boating?
It all depends on the location and the makeup of the individual harbors. I'm sure there will be some areas where boaters will have to use more caution navigating because of the lower water levels. That's always a possibility.
So, like the ski operators in northern Michigan, we should all be singing "Let It Snow," right?
We would, for increased water levels come next spring, we'd like to see an active storm track bringing, good amounts of snow to the entire Great Lakes region, yes.
He's dreaming of a white Christmas. Keith Kompaltowitz with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in Detroit. Thank you very much for the time this morning and for bringing it to our attention. 18 after the hour. Jim Nantz coming shortly. David Brandon, University of Michigan Athletic Director, is next. David Brandon, the athletic director of the University of Michigan, will join us shortly. This is his favorite song, I think, now. And Jim Nantz from CBS Sports will be along shortly as well. The Red Wings had the Phoenix Coyotes in town yesterday in downtown Detroit, and radio broadcaster Ken Kal was there.
Thanks, Michael Patrick. Henrik Zetterberg's fourth goal of the season in overtime lifted Detroit to a 3-2 victory over the Phoenix Coyotes last night at Joe Louis Arena. Dan Cleary gave Detroit a 1-0 lead at the 1:40 mark of the first period. Martin Hansel tied the game with 55 seconds left in the opening frame. Keith Yandel gave Phoenix a 2-1 lead as he fired his third of the season behind Jimmy Howard at 7:31 of the second period. The Red Wings fought their way back, though. Nicholas Lidstrom fired a slap shot behind Ilya Bryzgalov at 7:24 the third to tie the game at 2. And then Zetterberg's tip-in goal in overtime enabled Detroit to record their 9th victory of the season. Detroit outshot the Coyotes 40-31. The final again in Hockeytown, Detroit 3 and Phoenix 2. That's the story from Joe Louis Arena. Now back to you, Michael Patrick, in the studio.
Ken will be there Thursday when the Red Wings host the Oilers at Joe Louis Arena. And yesterday, Red Wings Dino Ciccarelli and Jimmy Devellano, a longtime general manager and vice president there, were inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame in Toronto. So we'll make them our Northwood University Leaders of the Day. Northwood University celebrating 50 years of producing leaders, Dino Ciccarelli and Jimmy D. Looks like Matthew Stafford is not going to need not going to need surgery on his shoulder. And the good news is, I guess this is good news, it's a new injury. He didn't re-injure the old injury. So he's going to be okay, it looks like. The question is he made of glass? And now we see that Jason Hanson, the kicker, is going to be out for some time, so the Lions are looking for a new kicker. That's really the best thing the Lions have had going for them for the longest time is Jason Hanson, Mr. Reliable, and now they have to go to battle without him. Yesterday, the Steelers held on to beat the Bengals. If you watch Monday Night Football, I think the Bengals have the best uniforms in the National Football League. They had black pants and their orange and black shirts and their tiger helmets yesterday, but it wasn't good enough to beat Big Ben and the Steelers. 27-21, the loss there in Cincinnati. And the Cowboys have fired their head coach, Wade Phillips. You know, he's been in the hot seat for some time now, and Dallas is unbelievably 1-7. worse than even the Lions this year. And this was a year they were talking about maybe playing the Super Bowl in their home stadium. Now they're without a coach. They're without, I think he was the defensive coordinator too. And now the future of the Cowboys is up in the air. I want to ask Jim Nantz about that when he joins us later in the program, because when you think about it, he's coming in for the Thanksgiving Day game, right, for CBS. And the traditional games are Detroit, the early game, Dallas, the late game. Both of those teams have terrible records this year. And I wonder if once again some of the other NFL teams are going to be saying, you know what, we should start rotating this Thanksgiving Day game, because who wants to watch a couple of turkeys get beat up on Thanksgiving? The Lions have the Patriots coming in. But, maybe they'll rise to the occasion. Maybe not, but this talk happens from time to time. David Brandon is the athletic director at the University of Michigan, and for the first time in about 3 years, Wolverines are going to be able to make some postseason plans, it looks like, because Michigan became bowl eligible with that fantastic win over Illinois. A big scoring triple overtime game. Congratulations, Mr. Brandon.
Thank you, Michael Patrick. Good morning.
Are you already sort of reading the tea leaves and speculating where the Wolverines might go in postseason? I presume since they're eligible, somebody will take them, right?
Yes, we have representatives from different bowls at just about every game.
Yeah.
'Tis the season, so they're all kind of it's a beauty contest, and they're all moving around the country looking at different teams. But obviously, your final record has a big determination on where you go. So we've still got some games to play.
Yeah, yes and no, though, right? I'm not sure how it works anymore. If you win a certain number of games, you're like predestined to go to a certain bowl. But when you talk about a beauty contest, that winged helmet goes a long way when it comes to the history of college football and having an alumni base that travels well. And after all, we've got an exciting quarterback. Everybody likes that with Denard Robinson. So it would seem like if all things were equal, Michigan has an advantage to getting a better bowl game, wouldn't you say?
Well, certainly we have always traveled well, and after taking a couple of years off, which none of us enjoyed, I think the idea that we'll have a lot of people who will be interested in traveling to a bowl game will certainly work in our favor. But at the end of the day, there's a progression in terms of where you finish and how your team does in the Big Ten Conference and overall, and we've still got some games to play. So I think our coach is reminding our team the better we do, the bigger and better bowl opportunity we have. So we still have a lot to play for.
And let's face it, any bowl game that Michigan would go to would not be as important or as intense as that Ohio State game that's coming up. That's like, really, no matter what the records are, it's like playing in a championship game every year, isn't it?
It sure is. That's been going on ever since, well, in the Ice Ages when I played in the Bo versus Woody rivalry. It began many years ago, and it still continues to be really one of those games that everybody looks to and the players look to and are real important to the coaches. So that's coming up again. We're in November, so it must be time, and hopefully it'll be a great battle this year down at Ohio State.
I'm sure it will be that. There's no question about that. And that is a tough place to go and play. The stadium is, like Michigan Stadium, has increased its capacity. It's very, very loud and very, very red. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, because coaches all say that. We're not going to be looking ahead to Ohio State, though it's pretty impossible. Do you get tired of people asking you about the status of Rich Rodriguez?
Yes, they do.
I would think so, because it seems like every time you turn on a sports talk show or look at a publication, this is speculated about. And I just wonder, because you know the man personally, how does he weather that kind of criticism? And on one hand, if you come to Michigan, you have to expect it. But on the second hand, personally, for your family and yourself, it can't be very easy to hear that going on all the time.
Well, I think you just answered your question. The reality is you do come to Michigan. It's the big stage. Expectations are very high. And anyone who's ever coached here has held up to an incredibly high standard. If you go back, even the great coaches we've had, when I played for Bo, he got a lot of criticism. His bowl record wasn't as good as it could be. Mm-hmm. And people criticized him because his game, his style of play was boring. So throughout time, there's been criticism of Michigan coaches, and particularly when you struggle. And we've had a couple years where we struggle. So Rich has had to incur a lot of that. On the same token, he's a tough guy, and he's got his sights set on winning championships at Michigan. And we as fans and as people who love the program need to do everything we can do to support him in that effort.
Has he asked you, Rich Rodriguez, if he's going to have his job next year?
No, we spend a lot of time together, but we're not focused on next year, or we're not talking about the year after that. We're focused on the season that we're playing. These guys are so incredibly busy and so incredibly wrapped up in the pressures of the moment. They're recruiting aggressively. They're preparing for a new team every week. They're dealing with all the new variables as they have issues with players being injured and things that evolve during the course of the season. Their focus is on the next game and doing as well as they can do this season, and that's where I want their focus to be.
You know, one thing seems to be clear this season is that you have two very, maybe even three, but two in evidence, very good quarterbacks.
We really do. Denard Robinson is a very, very special athlete, as everyone knows, and he sure is exciting to watch. But there have been situations where Tate Forcier has needed to come in, and Tate has a lot of experience and has a lot of ability, and he's equally as exciting when he gets out there.
Yeah.
And Devin Gardner is a very, very special athlete, and he's somebody who's going to play a lot of football for Michigan as well. So our coaches have done a terrific job of recruiting and coaching some really talented people at that position, and they're young. All of them are very young, and so the future looks bright at that position for Michigan.
Yep, and that big bowl, the big house, as you call it, is filled up every Saturday, every home game Saturday, and that's a testament, too, to the spectacle that Michigan football is, even beyond the record on the field. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say. We've had great support from our fans with our new spaces that we've activated, our enclosed seating spaces and our club seats, and we really worked hard this year to create the wow for our fans. We've had a lot of really fun shows. This last game, we had our salute to the military as a precursor to Veterans Day, and it's been a terrific season in Michigan Stadium.
I want to say thank you, too, for the couple of times that I've been to games this year, the friendly nature of the people working at the game. And I understand there was some Disney-type training involved and that sort of thing, but it's noticeable the second you walk through the gate, the smiles and the welcome to Michigan Stadium and I hope you had a good time and that kind of thing. And that doesn't go unnoticed. It's terrific.
I appreciate you pointing that out, Michael Patrick. We've worked really, really hard and done a lot of training. We want people who come to the big house to feel welcome and appreciated, and we want that game day experience to be as positive as it can be. And we've spent a lot of time with our game operations people to hit that point home. And if you're feeling that and seeing that, that makes me feel very good.
Yeah, it's a big house, but it's a big friendly house, and I think that goes a long way. Thanks for the time this morning. We sure appreciate it, and we'll talk again as we get closer to the Ohio State game and the resulting bowl game.
You bet. Go Blue against Purdue. That's what we're focused on right now.
That's spoken like a football player and a coach. We're not looking past Purdue. The Spoiler Makers, they were once called back in the day. All the best to you, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's David Brandon, the athletic director for the University of Michigan Wolverines. He used to be the CEO of Domino's Pizza right down the street there and in Ann Arbor. Ann Doyle's going to join us right now from Ann Doyle Strategies. I got a whole bunch of things to talk to her about. She was a sports journalist in the auto business, and now she's soon to be author and leadership consultant from Auburn Hills and the City Council there. How are you, madam?
Good morning. It's always great to hear David Brandon. We're so lucky to have him at taking over there at the University of Michigan.
Very good fella there indeed. Now, let me ask you this. Despite the shaky economy, women are launching their own businesses at a rate of more than 2 to 1 over men, according to a new survey. Here you come, huh?
Well, this is not a surprise for anybody who's been really watching those trends for quite a long time, which I have, obviously. These numbers in terms of women starting businesses at much higher numbers than men has been going on, accelerating for almost a decade. And what's driving that are a lot of factors, and a lot of people feel that one of the primary reasons is that so many women, really talented women, running into the glass ceiling and inflexibility in terms of work schedules, in traditional corporate and work environments, basically bailed out and said, hey, they didn't bail out to go home full time. They bailed out to take control of their own opportunities, their future, and flexibility. And starting a business is doggone hard work. But multitasking women, were able to kind of handle, their own destiny in a way many women feel they still can't.
More with Ann Doyle as soon as we get back in 4 minutes. It's Michael Patrick Shields all across Michigan. Our technical director, Tony Cuthbert, has a sense of humor. That's why he's playing the song Venus about the goddess for Ann Doyle, who's a champion for women. Welcome back to the program, Goddess. How are you?
Nobody's called me that in a long time.
Yeah.
Hi, Michael Patrick.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tony.
Keith Olbermann, is a guy that I can't resist watching, but at the same time, I have sort of visceral reaction to because he's so partisan and he seems to be always so angry and so bitter and so mean-spirited. Was suspended last week from MSNBC from his show Countdown for a couple of days without pay. What happened, and is he coming back?
Olbermann was back on the air last night.
Was he?
And, yes, Keith Olbermann, former sports broadcaster turned political host, was suspended by MSNBC for 2 days for making political donations. And I thought it was fascinating because, what we've seen happen, and it really began, I think, with Fox, but we've seen this incredible situation where, you pick your channel based on what your political views are and what political views you want to hear coming at you. So MSNBC is all about, progressive, democratic kind of values, and Olbermann every night is out there talking about his political positions. And so for him to be suspended by MSNBC for a policy they have for their journalists of not giving political donations because they're supposed to remain objective, to me is really hypocritical, but it's also an example of how blurred the line has gotten, Michael Patrick, between what's a journalist and what's an entertainer, political entertainer, which is what I'd call Olbermann these days.
Yeah, and at the same time, sometimes they let him anchor election coverage, which sort of puts him in the newsy role. And he interviews some of NBC's best assets, like Chuck Todd, who covers the White House for the news department. People like that are often on his program. That puts him in an uncomfortable spot, doesn't it?
Well, I don't know if it puts him in an uncomfortable spot. He's making about $10 million a year, and he's there. He's got the highest ratings of anybody on their network. And so, some people even wonder whether he did this intentionally, because he certainly knew the policy, and political donations are always reported publicly, so there's no way he thought his management wouldn't find out about it, whether he did that to kind of challenge the policy. But, other journalists at NBC News are very uncomfortable with the roles that he has been in, like you mentioned, hosting election coverage and, like moving back and forth from journalist to host to political opinionator, and it's for people who don't really know all the background. It's disingenuous and it's really very creating misperceptions out there, and you have to really sort of discern who's a journalist and who's not these days, and that's not always clear.
Yeah, I'll say. Now, wait a minute. You took some serious losses in the election last week, and I don't mean Republican or Democrat. I mean female versus male. For instance, you lost the governor of California. Meg Whitman lost out there. Also, you lost the other computer lady who was running for United States Senate.
Carly Fiorina.
She lost, too. What's going on?
Well, right. One of the things that's interesting is that actually there was a dramatic increase in the number of overall women candidates who ran, nationally and locally. A significant increase in numbers of women, Republican women who have run, because in the past it's been a much higher number of Democratic women who have been running. And so many more Republican women running. And, as you see them running, you also had a lot of women against women races, which was very unusual, like Barbara Boxer, Senator Barbara Boxer running against Carly Fiorina. So, there were definitely some losses, but I think the gains that we've seen in terms of overall numbers of women running is good direction.
Your old company is going to be featured on CNBC, speaking of an NBC product?
Ford Motor Company. You're talking about this, this big documentary that's coming up actually tonight. It's premiering tonight on CNBC. It's called Rebuilding an American Icon. And it's really the whole story, kind of from an insider's look. They were given great inside access within the company, behind-the-scenes look at really how Ford has led this turnaround. And I love the way they characterized Alan Mulally, in the press releases about the program. They call him the tireless and steel-nerved CEO. And so this is all part of Ford's doing an amazing job of telling the story, not only of what they've done to come back, but of how they're getting their branding and their image and reputation built up out there.
We will be watching, and I'm sure you will too. And you can find her at Ann Doyle Strategies. That's Ann with an E, AnnDoyleStrategies.com. I've got my new book coming out next week, and I hope that you will let me know when yours is out, right?
Coming up, yeah. I just got galleys last night, as a matter of fact, Michael Patrick.
Did you?
And you're a pro at this game of books. Congratulations. I'm looking forward to reading your new book, too.
Well, thank you very much. We're going to have a book launch party next Wednesday, which I'm sure you've got the invitation to, and so we'll stay in touch on couple of authors chatting it up here. Ann Doyle from Ann Doyle Strategies. Invite Yourself to the Party is my book, and we'll talk about hers as soon as it comes out. She's looking at the galley proofs right now. Jim Nance will join us in 20 minutes. Mark Brewer, the Democratic Party chair, surfaces when we come back.
And somebody heard
You see so many dreams.
I hope this isn't Indian summer. It's not warm enough to be Indian summer, is it? And I hope it comes later in November, our traditional Indian summer. Remember last year, the Penn State-Michigan State game was the weekend before Thanksgiving, and it was shirt sleeves. It was in the 70s out there outside Spartan Stadium, so I'm counting on that. Mark Brewer, the chair of the Michigan Democratic Party, with us in our Gillespie Group storefront studio. Good morning to you.
Morning, Michael Patrick.
Well, what can you say?
Well, the election last week was clearly a protest vote. There's no question about it. People were very unhappy because of the economy. If you look, though, at the relative state of the two parties, the Republicans are actually less popular than the Democrats, but the Democrats are perceived to be in charge, president, governor, charge of the Congress, and so forth, when the economy is in tough shape. So I think everybody, on a bipartisan basis, the analysis I've seen, pretty much indicate that. That being said, we're going forward. I'm starting to get ready for 212. Governor-elect Snyder and the Republicans are now completely in charge of the Michigan economy, the Michigan government, the Michigan budget, and it's their responsibility now to solve all these problems, and we're going to be watching them very closely and holding them accountable.
You must have been surprised, or were you, when Andy Dillon was named state treasurer?
Neither. I'm happy for Andy. Congratulate Andy. But the real proof of bipartisanship here for Governor-elect Snyder is going to be in the policies that he pursues. And so that's what we're looking at. Are we going to see bipartisan policies out of his administration? In addition to the budget, $1.5 billion budget deficit, which will double if he cuts the MBT like he promises he will. There's a big test coming up soon. Unemployment benefits are about to expire for hundreds of thousands of people in Michigan, as well as nationally. What is Governor-elect Snyder going to do? Is he going to go to bat for those unemployed Michiganders? Is he going to lobby the Republicans in the Congress to extend those unemployment benefits? That is among many tests that he is about to face.
Some people are saying that he's going to be outflanked to the right the whole way, that there'll be some wolves out there, waiting to come at him in the re-elect. They're already talking about the re-elect from the right. Do you think that's likely? And if so, doesn't that mean he's a more suitable governor for Democrats' tastes?
Well, again, I think the proof is in the doing.
Yeah.
And we haven't seen any policy announcements or policy enactments. He got through the entire campaign being very vague about what he would do. A lot of the talk was about process, I'll consult, I'll work, and so forth. The real test is, what are the policies you're going to enact? What's the budget that he's going to propose? How is he going to deal with this $1.5 billion budget deficit? Who's going to get hurt? Is the pain going to be shared equally? That's the proof.
Will Senator Whitmer, as the Senate Democratic leader, and Randy Richardville, they're famous friends, will she have more of a voice now because Randy Richardville will be the Senate Republican leader?
I think they have an excellent working relationship from what I know. I know Senator Whitmer far better than I know Senator Richardville. She's very articulate. I think she'll be a great spokesperson for Democratic values. And I think she has indicated, like all of us have indicated, look, we're willing to work with Republicans.
That's what
I
hear.
We're not going to compromise our principles, but we are willing to work together on a bipartisan basis. And that's going to be, again, the acid test that's coming up. Is there going to be true bipartisanship, or is all this just rhetoric and camouflage for policies that are designed to hurt working folks here in Michigan?
Are you interested in the George W. Bush memoir? Comes out today.
Oh, I probably, when I get a chance. I don't get a chance to do much reading.
Yeah.
I'll probably take a look at it at some point.
He said apparently that John Engler was, in fact, one of the finalists to run as vice president with him back in 2000 when he picked Dick Cheney instead.
As I recall the press stories, his name was certainly bandied about and got a lot of attention as a potential VP.
Hillary Clinton said the other day that she's not going to run for president ever, that she likes her job as Secretary of State, and by the time, she would be able to run if Obama gets 8 years, she's not interested. Do you take her at her word?
Well, if she said that, I certainly do. Circumstances change, though, dramatically, even in the course of a year or two. So we'll have to see. I mean, we've got a really deep bench on the Democratic side in terms of potential national candidates in the future, and I hope she'll remain one of them.
Do you think President Obama could have a primary fight?
I doubt it. I don't see that. I think he's done a tremendous job under difficult circumstances. We need to do more, and he acknowledges we need to do more to improve the economy and do these kind of things. And again, I hope that the Republicans who are about to take over the U.S. House are true to their word in terms of wanting to work with the president. If they're just going to play political games for the next 2 years designed to defeat him, that's not in the best interest of the country.
Do you find it unusual that there was such a major swing only 2 years later? We talked about the Democratic tsunami. 2 years later, it looks like a Republican version.
Well, we've had very volatile politics in this country over the last 3 election cycles. If you look at it, actually, in terms of Democrats taking over the House, and then we won the presidency, and now what happened last Tuesday. I think voters are very frustrated and angry, particularly over the state of the economy. And they are looking for folks who are going to get something done. And that's why, again, I think the Republicans now, particularly here in Michigan, they're in the hot seat now. It's now their responsibility. They can't blame the Democrats. They can't say the Democrats obstructed us. It's their now responsibility to fix the budget, to fix the economy here in Michigan. And the voters are going to be watching very closely. And they're going to be ousted if they don't perform.
Who's the leading candidate for the re-elect against Snyder for the Democrats?
We'll let the next 2 to 4 years play out, Michael Patrick. I mean, look, I want him to succeed on behalf of all of us here in Michigan. That's the question. Is he going to succeed? If he doesn't, the voters are going to hold him accountable just like they hold everybody else.
We shall see. Thanks for being here this morning.
Glad to be here.
Mark Brewer, the chairman of the Michigan Democratic Party. Television viewers, thanks for being with us. CBS sportscaster Jim Nantz on the radio. When we get back in about 10 minutes, join us at 12:40 a.m. in the Lansing market. If you're watching on TV, everybody else just stay right where you are. It's Michael Patrick Shields.
Adios and via con Dios.